Welcome to Land of Horror. Today, we will continue our journey to explore the most chilling mysteries. Do you have the courage to face spooky stories, terrifying legends, and unexplained supernatural phenomena? Join me as we delve into haunted places, dark secrets, and legendary figures that will send shivers down your spine. Before we begin, make sure to hit the subscribe button so you won't miss any videos, and let's step into the world of Land of Horror together. Get ready, because thrilling moments await you. Are you ready to explore? As the sunset faded behind distant mountains, the town of Westbourne was shrouded in a somber silence. The wind whispered through the trees, but in this small suburban house, pain and doubt reigned. John Latham, a middle-aged man, sat quietly in the living room, his eyes fixed on a picture of his sister, Sarah, who had tragically passed away a few weeks ago in an unexplained fire. Sarah was a vibrant girl, but now only memories and immense loss remained. John couldn't comprehend what had happened to her. The fire had been investigated, but no clues surfaced. The police insisted it was just an accident. Yet, John could not accept this. In his mind, one question lingered. Was someone responsible for Sarah's death? The day he returned to the office after the funeral, John's heart was heavy. Everyone at work tried to comfort him, but their empathy couldn't soothe the ache in his heart. As he sat at his desk, the atmosphere in the room felt more oppressive. He decided to check his voicemail, an old habit of searching for messages from Sarah. Then, her voice echoed, sharp and filled with desperation. "Help me! Help me! I'm trapped! I can't breathe!" Each word was like a knife piercing his heart. How could this be? Sarah was gone, yet that voice sounded so clear. Panic surged within him, leaving him breathless. John immediately reported it to the police, but they merely shook their heads, claiming it was just an old message that had accidentally been played. That night, as he returned home, a chilling atmosphere enveloped everything. He walked down the hallway where Sarah's picture hung on the wall. The dim light from the desk lamp illuminated her bright smile. But John couldn't look at it without feeling the heart-wrenching pain. The question haunted him. Why? Suddenly, a strange sound echoed from the hallway. It was footsteps, soft yet steady, as if someone was stealthily moving in the darkness. John felt a shiver run down his spine. It was late, and he was the only one at home. His heart raced as the sound stopped, and a foul smell began to permeate the air, as if something was burning. John sprang up, his heart pounding. As he stepped into the hallway, he noticed Sarah's bedroom door wide open, despite having locked it tightly after her death. A cold breeze swept through, making him shiver. As he approached, a voice rose up, gentle as the wind. "John!" That voice, familiar yet chilling. It couldn't be Sarah. She was gone. But that voice made his heart ache. John took a deep breath, trying to reassure himself, but an overwhelming urge compelled him to move forward. Entering the room, everything remained just as it had been the day Sarah was alive. Her small desk was neatly arranged, but in the center sat a journal, its pages open as if waiting for him. His heart tightened as he read the first line. "If anyone finds this journal, please save me. I feel like I'm being watched. I'm not safe." A chill ran down John's spine. A vague fear rose within him. Sarah's death was not just an accident. Something lurked, hidden in the shadows. The lingering question was, would John have the strength to face the truth, or would he be pulled into the nightmare his sister had experienced? John sat down in the chair by Sarah's desk, his hands trembling as he held her journal. His mind was in chaos, unsure of where to start. He flipped through each page, his eyes glued to the frantic words Sarah had written. Her tangled thoughts weighed heavily on his heart. "I feel like someone is watching me. Strange noises appear at night, and I feel like there's a gaze upon me. Emotion surged within John. Sarah was never one to be sensitive or easily frightened. If she had written these things, there had to be a reason. He continued reading, and each line filled him with more panic. I saw a stranger standing outside my window. He wore a black coat, and I couldn't see his face. I thought I was imagining things, but those bizarre dreams keep coming back. I can't sleep anymore. Sweat beaded on John's forehead. He stood up, determined to uncover the truth. If someone was stalking Sarah, he had to find out who they were. A sense of unease and fear for his own safety rose like a tidal wave. Stepping outside, the night had fallen. The moon shone brightly, but its light seemed insufficient to dispel the darkness enveloping his mind. John walked around the neighborhood, heading towards Sarah's apartment. It had been abandoned since the fire, but perhaps there would be a clue. When he arrived, he noticed the front door still intact. He pushed it open. A chill swept over him immediately. The apartment smelled of lingering smoke, and the stifling air made him uncomfortable. He turned on the light, the weak yellow glow illuminating the room. Everything remained as it was when Sarah was alive, but an eerie silence hung in the air. John walked down the hallway, recalling each step Sarah had taken. Suddenly, a strange noise echoed from the living room. He stopped, listening. It sounded like someone was whispering. His heart raced. He approached the door, his heart pounding in his chest. Gently pushing the door, John peered inside. No one was there. But what sent chills down his spine was a book lying on the table. It was one of Sarah's favorite novels, yet it was open to a page he didn't remember her reading. Trying to suppress his fear, John stepped closer, and suddenly, a small piece of paper fell out of the book. He picked it up, reading the scrawled message. He's not just watching me. He's been in the house. A cold wave ran down John's spine. Had someone sneaked into this apartment while Sarah was alive? Perhaps that very presence led to her death. He could not hesitate any longer. John decided to search every nook and cranny of the apartment. As he entered the bedroom, a strange feeling washed over him. The wall next to the bed bore scorch marks, a grim reminder of the tragic fire. He bent down to check around and suddenly noticed a small plastic card hidden beneath the rug. He picked it up, recognizing it as Sarah's credit card. What was strange was that it wasn't in her wallet. Why was it here? Perhaps someone had broken in and stolen things. John felt the eerie presence of a stranger, someone Sarah had tried to warn him about but couldn't. Suddenly, a loud knock echoed from behind. John turned, his heart racing. The window was wide open, the wind rushing in and casting his shadow into chaos. He stepped forward to look outside. In the dim light, he saw a figure quickly disappear around the corner. Without thinking, John rushed out of the apartment, chasing after that figure. Each step was filled with determination. He couldn't let that person escape. They might be the one who had stalked Sarah, and now he couldn't allow himself to be the next victim. When he reached the corner, John panted heavily, searching for that shadow. But no one was there. Only his own ragged breath and the chilling silence remained. He knew he had to act. The truth about Sarah's death lay in the hands of a mysterious figure, and John had to find them before it was too late. John couldn't stop. Even though fear flooded his heart, the thought of Sarah and the mystery surrounding her death drove him to uncover the truth. He raced through the dark streets, eyes keenly observing every shadow, every rustling tree, each one making him feel as if someone was watching. Deciding to return to Sarah's office, where she used to work, seemed like the best place to start. The small room had been locked up tight since her death, but John believed he could find something the police had missed. He quickly searched for the keys to the apartment and made his way back to the office. When he arrived, the room was just as it had been, filled with memories and fragments of her life. John rummaged through every drawer, every bookshelf, looking for clues. As he searched, a photograph slipped out of Sarah's wallet, making him pause. It was a picture of Sarah with a strange man, standing together at a cafe. He looked ordinary, yet his eyes were intense, as if hiding a secret. Holding the photograph, John felt a wave of anxiety wash over him. Who was this man? Why had Sarah taken a photo with him? The questions haunted him. He decided he needed to find out more about this man. Leaving the office, John took a taxi to a nearby bar where Sarah often went with friends. Perhaps someone there might recognize the stranger in the photo. Entering the bar, the loud sounds and dim lighting overwhelmed him. He started chatting with the bartender and a few of Sarah's acquaintances, but no one had any information about the man in the picture. Frustrated, John sat down at a table near the window, carefully observing the crowd. Suddenly, a familiar figure walked in. It was Lisa, Sarah's best friend. John quickly stood up and approached her. "Lisa," he called, hope filling his voice. Lisa turned, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight of John. "Oh, John! I didn't expect to see you here. I need your help. There's a stranger in Sarah's photo, and I don't know who he is. Can you help me find out about him?" Lisa nodded, but her expression shifted to one of concern. "Lately, I felt something was off. Sarah mentioned a man she didn't feel safe around, but I didn't know who he was." The tension rose as they began examining the photograph together. John decided to share all the information he had gathered. As he spoke, Lisa suddenly interrupted. "Wait! I remember. Sarah mentioned a guy named Mark. He often showed up at parties and had some odd behavior. Mark? Did he do anything to Sarah?" John asked, his heart racing. "I'm not sure, but Sarah said he had a strange gaze, like he was secretly watching her. I think he might be connected to this." John's worry intensified. They needed to find Mark, and quickly. Together, he and Lisa decided to search for information about him. They scoured social media, reached out to mutual friends, and finally found an address where Mark was known to hang out. It was another bar, tucked away in a dark alley. John felt the adrenaline surge as they approached. The atmosphere inside was tense, with dim lighting and loud music. They walked along the bar, scanning the unfamiliar faces, hoping to spot Mark. Finally, they saw a man sitting alone in a corner. It was Mark. He had a cold demeanor, his sharp eyes sweeping across the room. John felt drawn to that gaze, but it also threatened him. "We need to ask him," Lisa whispered, but John felt a wave of fear crash over him. He wasn't just a suspect. He could be a danger to their lives. "Stay here," John said, trying to remain calm. He walked toward Mark, gathering his courage. "Excuse me, can I sit here?" John asked, gesturing to the chair opposite Mark. Mark looked up, his cold eyes sizing him up. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice dry, devoid of emotion. "I'm Sarah's brother," John replied, struggling to hide his frustration. "I want to know about her. Were you stalking her?" Mark laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I don't know where she is. Why do you care?" "Because she's dead," John retorted, unable to control his emotions. "And I suspect you're involved. What do you think I could do?" Mark asked, his expression unchanged. At that moment, a loud noise erupted from behind. Both turned to see a group of people entering the bar, drawing everyone's attention. John felt uneasy, as if the presence of this group could change everything. In that instant, Mark stood up, glancing at John and then at the group. "You should be careful," he said before quickly leaving the bar. John sensed something was wrong. He wasn't just a suspect. Mark might indeed be the one who had been stalking Sarah. and now he knew John was investigating. "We need to go now," John said to Lisa. They hurriedly exited the bar, hearts racing. On the way back, John couldn't stop thinking about Mark and what he had said. Who were those people? Were they connected to Sarah's death? Everything was becoming more complicated, and John knew he was only beginning a perilous journey to uncover the truth. Returning home, John's mind whirled with chaotic thoughts. The image of Mark, his cold gaze, and the mysterious group's appearance in the bar made him feel an impending threat lurking nearby. He knew he couldn't just sit and wait. He needed to uncover the truth, not only about Sarah, but also about the connection between Mark and the others. The next morning, John woke up with renewed determination. He began searching for information about Mark on social media, from friends to colleagues. Every clue mattered, and he couldn't afford to miss anything. After hours of digging, John discovered an anonymous account that Mark frequently interacted with. This account consistently posted negative comments about Sarah, sometimes viciously criticizing her. Anger surged within John. Why would someone dedicate such attention and hatred towards his sister? Finally, he decided to reach out to a few mutual friends to ask about Mark. One of them, a girl named Mia, was taken aback when she heard Mark's name. "He's a strange guy. I once saw him lurking outside a party Sarah was hosting. He just stared at her. Did he have any relationship with Sarah?" John asked, excitement rising. "No, I don't think so. But I felt something was off. He often dodged questions about his life and spoke vaguely." John nodded, feeling more convinced that Mark was connected to Sarah's death. He decided he had to find Mark's address to confront him. A few hours later, John had located Mark's address. It was in an old apartment complex, not far from downtown. He drove there with courage, but anxiety still gnawed at him. When he arrived, John parked near the complex and scanned the area. It seemed quiet, but he felt tense. He entered the building, unsure of what he would find inside. On the top floor, John knocked on the apartment door he had discovered. There was no response. He knocked harder, still nothing. Finally, he decided he couldn't wait any longer. The door was unlocked. He gently opened it, stepping into a dim, musty space. The clutter and weak lighting made the place even more mysterious. John walked in, feeling as though he were intruding into another world. He searched for signs of Mark. Everything was silent, the only sound being his footsteps echoing in the stillness. Suddenly, his gaze landed on a table where a laptop was open. He approached and noticed a document displayed on the screen. Unable to resist his curiosity, he pulled up a chair and began to read. The document was a list of people Mark had been tracking, including Sarah. Marginal notes made John's heart race. "Monitor her movements. Don't let her know." Fear surged within John. Mark wasn't just watching Sarah. He was planning something dark. He quickly closed the laptop, but a noise from behind made him turn around. Mark stood in the doorway, his expression blank. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his tone cold. Blood rushed to John's face. "I came to talk to you." "About Sarah," he said, trying to keep his voice steady. "You should leave right now," Mark replied, stepping closer, his gaze threatening. "No, you were stalking her. What did you do to Sarah?" John yelled, unable to contain his anger. Mark scoffed. "You don't understand anything. Sarah put herself in danger. She didn't know she was being watched. What are you talking about?" John shouted, filled with worry and fury. Mark stepped closer, his eyes challenging. "She didn't listen. She didn't believe me. But you can't protect her now." Suddenly, a loud crash from the window made both turn. A group of unfamiliar faces had stormed in, surrounding John and Mark. John's heart raced as he realized they weren't friends. They were a threat. You both have to come with us. One of them spoke, his voice icy. John felt helpless. Everything was happening too fast. He wasn't just facing Mark now. He was confronted by a mysterious group. Let go of me. John roared, but the group overpowered him. They shoved him towards the door, and Mark stood there, his gaze still cold. You can't stop this, he said, then stepped outside. John knew he was in a dangerous situation. To protect himself and find out the truth about Sarah's death, he had to find a way to escape from these captors. The moment of decision was approaching, and the race against time was beginning. John felt a wave of helplessness wash over him as the strangers dragged him out of Mark's apartment. They were strong, saying little, just quietly pulling him toward the exit. His mind raced with a million thoughts. Why did they want to kidnap him? What were their ties to Sarah's death? As they reached the hallway, John realized there was no way out. Panic filled him, but he couldn't let himself be subdued. In an instant, he knew he had to act. He had to find a way to escape their grip. Suddenly, he heard footsteps coming up the stairs. He turned to see a woman approaching, seemingly unaware of the tense situation. He quickly blinked at her, hoping she would understand his plea for help. Run! John shouted, but the group had spotted her. Stop! One of them barked, but the woman had already realized the danger and turned to dash down the stairs. With no time to hesitate, John decided to take advantage of the chaos. He broke free from the grips of his captors and sprinted down the stairs in the direction the woman had gone. His hurried footsteps echoed in the silent corridor, the calls of the group behind him pushing him to move faster. Adrenaline surged, and John ran quicker, not daring to look back. He needed to find a way to escape them. Bursting onto the first floor, he rushed out the front door, inhaling the cold air. The street outside was still bustling with people. He spotted a taxi parked nearby and didn't hesitate to wave it down. The cab stopped, and he jumped in, shouting at the driver, Go! Drive fast. Where to? The driver asked, but without waiting for an answer, he hit the gas. John's mind remained in turmoil. He had to find Mark and those behind this plan. Together with Lisa, they had marked several important locations on a map where Mark might be hiding. He pulled out his phone, tried to call Lisa, but all he heard was ringing. They had lost contact. As the taxi turned onto a smaller street, John felt his heart drop. A strange car was trailing them, seemingly unrelenting. He turned to the driver. Can you take us into that neighborhood? Sure, the driver replied, but his voice betrayed anxiety. Drive faster. John urged. They veered into a narrow alley, but the car behind them stayed close. John felt the tension escalating. They couldn't let those people catch up. Stop at the corner, John commanded. When the taxi halted, he quickly opened the door and bolted out, hoping the strange vehicle wouldn't notice him. Running through the streets, John felt as if he were fleeing a nightmare. Each step was a step toward the truth, and he was determined not to let Sarah's death be in vain. Eventually, he found a quaint cafe where he and Sarah used to hang out. He decided to go in, seeking a moment of safety and clarity. Inside the cafe, the warm lights eased some of his panic. John quickly found a secluded corner and sat down. He pulled out his phone, tried to call Lisa again. The call still wouldn't connect, and anxiety began to swell within him once more. Maybe I need to find another way, John whispered to himself. He started considering reaching out to the police. They might help him uncover the truth about Mark and the people watching him. As he sat in the cafe, he was startled to see Neil walk in. John! I've been looking for you everywhere, she gasped, her eyes wide with worry. I heard something happen. I saw those people. Mia, they're trying to kidnap me. You have to help me find Mark. John implored. We can go to the police. They might protect you, Mia suggested. Right, but first, we need more information about Mark. He may have told someone about his plans. John nodded. They began discussing their approach. While they talked, Mia suddenly glanced out the window and screamed, "Run! They're coming!" John felt his body freeze. The strange figures had appeared outside the cafe. There was no time left. Go! We have to get out of here. They dashed out of the cafe, but John knew they couldn't keep running forever. He needed a plan. They had to find a way to confront the people pursuing them. Maybe we can hide in a shop, Mia suggested. They rushed into a small store filled with various items. John looked around, a sudden idea sparking in his mind. We can change our appearances. You can find a hat and a coat while I create a distraction. Mia quickly searched for clothes, while John watched out the window, monitoring the movements of their pursuers. They were searching, but hadn't yet realized where they were. After a few minutes, Mia returned with a hat and a large coat. They quickly changed their outfits. Now we need to find a way to contact the police. They might help us track Mark, John said. As they prepared to leave the store, John felt a rush of apprehension. The battle wasn't over yet. One big question remained. Could they find Mark and bring him to justice before it was too late? As John and Mia left the store, they felt as if every eye was watching them. Despite their change of clothes, anxiety was etched on their faces. We need a safe place to think, John said, scanning the surroundings. They decided to head to a nearby park, where there were many people passing by. The fresh air helped them temporarily forget their worries. We need to inform the police about Mark and those people, Mia emphasized. Finding a secluded spot, they began calling the police. When the call ended, John felt a slight sense of relief. They're on their way here, but we can't stay too long. We need to find out where Mark lives before the police arrive, John said. Both decided to return to Mark's laptop that John had previously accessed. They knew it would contain vital information. The trip back to Mark's apartment became a race against time. When they arrived, no one was there. They quickly entered. John opened the laptop and began to sift through the files. Mia kept watch outside, ensuring no one was tailing them. Time dragged on, and every second was precious. John discovered a folder containing documents. Most were notes about Sarah. Some included personal information, while others were Mark's thoughts about her. He's truly obsessed, John thought to himself, worry creeping back in. Suddenly, Mia shouted from the doorway, "Someone's coming!" John panicked, hurriedly saving the important documents to a USB before shutting the laptop. "We have to go now," John said, and they rushed outside, trying not to make a sound. As they exited the apartment, a familiar voice rang out. "Where are you running to, John?" Mark emerged from the shadows, his eyes glinting ominously. "Run!" John shouted, and they dashed in the opposite direction. But Mark blocked their path. The strangers John had seen in the bar stood behind them, forming a tight circle. "We didn't come here to play hide and seek," Mark said, his tone cold. "You can't keep us here." John yelled, "You have no right. Right or wrong, I don't care. I just know I won't let this happen again." Mark replied, his gaze sharp. Fear enveloped John and Mia, but they couldn't give up. "We need to fight back," John whispered to Mia. "Yes, we can't let him control us," Mia responded, courage rising within her. Suddenly, a police car appeared in the distance, its lights flashing brightly. Seeing the vehicle, John exclaimed, "The police! They're here!" Mark's expression shifted to panic, and he quickly ordered his group, "Get them out of here." But before they could act, John sprinted toward the police car, shouting, "Help us! He's stalking us. The police quickly jumped out of the vehicle, rushing forward. Stop. We have a warrant. One officer yelled, aiming a gun at Mark and his crew. Go. Let's go. John pulled Mia toward the police car. Mark's group started to panic, but Mark stood there, his face unreadable. The chase was swift, and the police successfully detained the kidnappers. John and Mia were escorted into the police car, feeling safer than ever. Thank you. John exhaled, turning to Mia. We did it. But what about Sarah? Mia asked, worry still evident. John glanced back toward Mark's apartment, where everything began. How closely had he watched Sarah? The police promised a thorough investigation, and John decided he wouldn't stop until he uncovered the truth. The next day, the police called John in to discuss the information from Mark's laptop. They discovered Mark was not merely a stalker. He had connections to criminal groups in the city, and Sarah could have been a victim of a larger scheme he had been secretly executing. After days of investigation, the police located Mark's residence. They gathered enough evidence to arrest him and his accomplices. On the day of the trial, John and Mia sat in the courtroom, filled with hope yet weighed down by grief. As Mark was brought before them, a surge of rage filled John. He had harmed his sister, and now he had to face justice. During the trial, all evidence pointed to Mark's intentional actions, and ultimately, he was sentenced to many years in prison. Though the pain of loss remained, John knew he had done everything he could to protect his sister. The battle was not just about finding the truth. It was a long journey toward healing the wounds. Looking to the future, John was determined to never forget Sarah. He would continue to fight for those who could not protect themselves. You will not be forgotten, John whispered with longing. I will always fight for you. The story closes, but life continues. John knew that while the truth had been revealed and justice served, there would always be new surprises and challenges awaiting him.